The term aphantasia has been growing in popularity. The idea was first discovered in 1880, but it wasn't until a patient called MX, who reported losing the ability to visualize things in his mind after heart surgery, that people started contacting Zeman, the guy that studied MX, about how they couldn't visualize anything in their head either, and that it's been that way their entire lives. Zeman made the term aphantasia in 2015, and it's still fairly unknown, but it's starting to take off. Phantasia is a normal mind's eye, able to visualize what you're thinking about. Aphantasia, on the other hand, is the absence of a mind's eye. About 2 to 3% of people seem to have aphantasia. Hyperphantasia is phantasia taken up a level. Super vivid, lifelike imagery. People with hyperphantasia say that the imagery that they can create is sometimes indistinguishable from the real world, which is actually pretty bad if they're doing something like driving. Prophantasia is the ability to sort of augment mental images with what you're actually seeing with your eyes. Where phantasia is in the back of your eyes, prophantasia is in the front of them. It's not very common, and it's apparently possible to have prophantasia while still having aphantasia. Prophantasia seems separate from the mind's eye. Phantasia isn't just images. Even though this video is only going to be covering that aspect, it also includes audio, like an internal monologue or hearing, taste, smell, and touch. So I'm pretty sure I have aphantasia. When I close my eyes, other than my stick figure character I see from excessive amounts of time spent animating these videos, it's black. When I take the visual tests, it's clear I don't have the ability. Phantasia and hyperphantasia sound like a mental illness to me, like finding out people hear voices in their head. This is a big change of perspective. I've kind of been bad at drawing art, so could this have been the reason why I was bad at it? Actually, it doesn't seem like that's the case. I know that the comment section of these types of videos are biased, but when looking at the comment section of aphantasia related videos, there's quite a few people talking about how they have aphantasia, but also do art or work in some creative field. It sounds like having aphantasia doesn't affect your ability to achieve things, but just changes the way you approach achieving it. There are definite things that can't be achieved at all though. If someone asks to visualize something, we can't. Athletes often visualize themselves doing this sport as a way of training, and it's effective. That's not possible for someone with aphantasia. It could also affect memory. Other than how we recall memories and the details that the brain deems worthy of keeping, the one apparent way that stands out to me is if you do something like memory palaces. A memory palace is a sort of memory hack. It's where you take a place you're familiar with, like your childhood home, and visually create it in your mind and place objects you want to remember inside of it. So if you want to remember a gingerbread house you saw, you can put it somewhere in your memory palace, and when you want to recall the gingerbread house, you enter your memory palace and go to the location you put the gingerbread house. You can also do this to memorize the order of objects. If someone gives you a list of things, you can add them to like a hallway from left to right. Then to recall the list in order, you can walk down the hallway and see the order in which they were listed. What's crazy is you can actually reverse it just as easily and recall them backwards by going right to left. All this is practically impossible to do with aphantasia. When I try to recall somebody's face, I can't. When I noticed this, it's like, I know what they look like, but why can't I see them? In the moment, it was like, meh. I've never known any different, but there has been a time I remember noticing a lack of imagery before finding out about the mind's eye. In stories, sometimes when a character has a friend or family member die, years later, sometimes they'll explain that they're afraid that they'll forget and lose the ability to picture them. With aphantasia, that already happens. I can't picture anybody's face anyway, so when somebody dies, pictures are the only thing I have left. I still have the memories, I can remember certain aspects of that person, but I can't picture them. Then again, what if aphantasia makes me more analytical, able to focus more on facts and details? The Buddhist monks spend time meditating, trying to attain equanimity and awareness. Same with using yoga to clear the mind. Yet here I am, able to close my eyes and everything is blank. Maybe not silent from emotions and thinking in general, but from images. It can be much easier to focus when an image isn't popping up every 4 seconds in a mind's eye. At least, I would imagine. Does this put me more in tune with reality? Could any of this be a bottleneck? Could thinking in images mean that you have to convert what you're visualizing into language to then communicate? But then could the ability to imagine what the person is describing aid in a deeper understanding? Having aphantasia could also explain my preference towards videos instead of books. I've always hated reading. When people read, they're getting a whole movie along with the book. When they read a description of a character, it adds to their visualization of the story, whereas I see nothing. I mean, sure, it kind of gives me a better grasp of the character, but it gets boring after a while. I never realized when people were daydreaming that they were actually seeing stuff. What I thought daydreaming was, is just thinking of a certain scenario while ignoring the outside world. The mind's eye is different from dreaming. With the case of MX, his dreams lost their visual content as well, but he later said his dreams regained their visual content. This indicates that the two areas of the brain may have some overlap. With the mind's eye, there seems to be more control, but with dreams, it's kind of as if your visual cortex just decides to turn on and start messing around. But what about lucid dreaming? I mean, when you're in a lucid dream, you basically have control over anything that happens. It sounds like you would be using the same things as you would when you're awake and daydreaming, or using your mind's eye. Actually, there was a YouTube comment of someone mentioning that once they realize that they're in a dream, the dream goes black, but they can still feel things in the dream, and that they feel things like being bitten and taste. So that's interesting. By the way, aphantasic people can still dream. I can dream. It's just weird. I can recall the dreams as if they're memories, but I can't picture them. I usually only recall the main events or plot lines, so to speak, of the dream. This follows into the hypnagogic aspects as well. Hypnagogic is when you're falling asleep and bridging the gap between awake and asleep, while hypnopompic is when you're going from asleep to awake. Also, when people are in sleep paralysis, these are the states you're in. During hypnagogia, sometimes you can be conscious while your brain's visual or dream part kicks in and see images. I've heard that you can actually force yourself into a lucid dream simply by staying conscious while falling asleep, which, by the way, actually works. There was a time when I woke in the morning, I was just rolling over or something, but I tried, really tried to visualize my neighbor's house, and it appeared. I think I woke for a second, but then I tried again, and I was in my driveway. I looked over and it looked like I was cleaning out a car. I don't remember anything else, but it was quite cool to what felt like force myself into a dream. This is actually now what I imagine imagination is like. So because we aren't able to picture things, when someone says, imagine this, we don't actually picture anything, but instead assume it's an expression for think about this. Yeah, imagining people in their underwear when giving a speech? What the frick? I thought it was just an expression to get yourself in a certain state of mind. You guys are actually picturing people in their underwear? Anyway, since most people don't know about aphantasia, they think we can picture things like they can. Without knowing about aphantasia, why would I know any differently either? Just like how other people wouldn't be able to imagine not being able to imagine things, we can't imagine what it's like to imagine things, though there are kind of exceptions. I know what it's like to dream, like the experience before when I forced myself into picturing my neighbor's house. I've had a glimpse of what it's like, and for people that can picture things, they can also clear their mind with a sort of meditation. Carl Jung has actually said that people think in images or in audio. He also said that if you think in images, you can go into a hypnagogic state and see an image, and as you focus on the image, it gets more and more realistic until it gets to the point where you can basically walk around in it. And if there's people in it, you can talk to them and have conversations with them. He also said that if you think in words or audio, when you do the same thing, you can start to hear voices. It sounds like Jung realized this phenomena before, hence why he made the categorization of thinking in audio or in images. Jung was born in 1875, so he wasn't the first to discover it. The first time a mind's eye was documented was in 1880, but it's still weird how it's kind of gone unresearched for so long. Anyway, there's a guy on YouTube. He has some good information on aphantasia. His channel is Aphantasia Meow. In one of his videos, he mentions that if you want to develop your mind's eye, then being in a state of meditation is helpful. When the brain is in that state, it's like getting your normal thoughts out of the way so you can focus more clearly on what's going on in the background. I think the method Carl Jung mentioned was a way to communicate with your unconscious, but it's still interesting that it follows the idea of clearing your conscious mind to then be able to listen or hear what your unconscious is saying. I found some things online that you can do to develop your mind's eye or learn how to visualize things in your head, but I'm going to save what I found for another video, where I'll also talk about what they've done for me, if they do anything, and it will also give me time to actually do them. But anyway, the rest will be to be continued until the next time.